South Africa confirms first case of coronavirus as Egypt reports first case in an Egyptian national. Cote d'Ivoire's President Alassane Ouattara rules out running for a third term. And Kenya and Somalia form a team to ease tension. This is CGTN. Welcome to Africa Live with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. We'll bring you the details on those stories in just a moment. But first, here's Ramanyang with the day's business headlines. Rama.
That's right, Beatrice. Here's what's coming up in the course of the hour. The International Monetary Fund says it supports part of Kenya's deficit reduction plan. And we'll tell you why cybercrime is increasingly targeting lax and unsecured business systems in South Africa. We'll have the details on those stories and lots more coming your way in the course of the hour. For now, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Beatrice.
Rama, thank you. And let's start the hour in South Africa, where the first case of COVID-19 has been confirmed. It is from a 38-year-old male who had traveled to Italy with his wife. This is the first case in the Southern African region and the third in Sub-Saharan Africa after Nigeria and Senegal. In total, the number of cases reported on the continent is 27, with Algeria being the worst affected. Confirming the case, South African Minister of Health said the cases were reported in KwaZulu-Natal.
We confirmed the existence of a patient who has tested positive for the COVID-19 virus for the first time in the country, and this patient was identified in the province of KwaZulu-Natal.
Well, for more, let's cross over to Angelo Coppola. He's in Johannesburg for us, and Adil Mahroui is joining us from Cairo, which has reported its first case in an Egyptian national. Angela, first to you, South Africa has reported its first case. It is the third case, however, confirmed in Sub-Saharan Africa. Can you give us more details on this case from South Africa?
Well, as you heard, Beatrice, the minister confirming that the 30-year-old was positive or tested positive. We now understand from a briefing that the minister gave about half an hour ago that his wife is also going to be tested because of the potential spread there. They're also monitoring the two children. The couple had, of course, visited and returned from Italy on the 1st of March. He then went to go and see the doctor. The doctor sent off a swab to the NICD and then confirming just 2 days ago that he was actually positive for the virus. He was in fact in self-imposed isolation. We do understand that the NICD, that's the National Institute for Communicable Diseases, and the Department of Health now have the family in their care. We're not sure where they're being kept at the moment, but the doctor has also placed himself in self-imposed isolation. We do know that, well, in fact, we don't know what the condition of the doctor is or any of his staff who might have tested the first sufferer. At the moment, of course, we know that he was part of a group of 9. The NICD have sent tracking and tracing teams down to KwaZulu-Natal to try and find the other 9 people and also people who they've been in contact with since arriving back in South Africa from Italy. So that is starting the process right now. As it stands, one confirmed case. We don't know what's going to be happening with the wife. That will she'll be swabbed and sent off for testing at the NICD. We understand it takes about 12 hours to confirm whether it's a positive or negative feed, but for now, the official word is one confirmed case in KwaZulu-Natal with the family in isolation under the care of the NICD. Beatrice?
Well, Adele, previous cases in Egypt have been among foreigners. Can you tell us more about the latest case, which is said to be an Egyptian national?
This is the third case Egypt officially confirms for COVID-19. The first 2 were non-Egyptians, both coming from different destinations. As you said, this is the first Egyptian national to be confirmed with COVID-19. The 44 years old has been coming or came to Egypt several days back from Serbia. He had a transit for 12 hours at a destination officially not disclosed, but some leaked information indicate that it could be France, and then he came to Egypt. He stayed for a few days, and then inside the country he had no symptoms, but after a few days of entering the country he has started to show symptoms, went to get hospitalized. The tests have been done, and 2 days or a day later came to be positive for COVID-19. He has moved to Egypt's Al-Nagela hospital, which is an isolated hospital created specifically for COVID-19 and is located in the northwest of the country near the Libyan borders. The people who came in contact with that case are being monitored closely, and so far no symptoms and they have not yet tested positive for COVID-19 according to the latest reports from the health ministry.
Well, Angelo, South Africa's health minister has warned that the country's health system would be tested by the coronavirus. Is the country equipped to deal with the outbreak? I mean, what measures have been put in place?
Well, look, the minister did say that 13 hospitals have been designated nationally to isolate and treat people who may show symptoms of the virus and have confirmed cases. Minister Kize was in fact briefing the Portfolio Committee on Health about this very topic on Wednesday. Staff at these hospitals, the 13 designated hospitals, have all received basic awareness and health and safety training related to how to deal with a suspected case of the virus. In terms of designated hospitals in KZN, the Department of Health did designate Gray's Hospital to manage all suspected coronavirus cases in the province because it's more central, and it's also dealt and prepared for cases around Ebola when we had that last big pandemic across the continent. However, we do understand that Addington Hospital is said by some people with knowledge of the matter to be better equipped and prepared because it has a specific isolation ward that can take 10 people, and that meets the required standards. In terms of the rest of the country, we have visited the academic hospital here in Johannesburg, Charlotte Maxeke, and that's been designated to handle cases. They have some 26 beds in the 5 wards that they've got to deal specifically with the outbreak of coronavirus. And then there are feeder hospitals in the east and west rand of Johannesburg that can pick up the overflow or manage the cases until there are beds available in Charlotte Maxeke. So there is some readiness. There have been demonstration runs done at Charlotte Maxeke to check whether the systems are functioning. We saw those tests happen 2 days ago. It seems that everything's in order. Again, we need to see the first cases up in this area to see if, in fact, that hospital can deal with the cases. That's
all right,
what we have for now, Beatrice.
Angelo Coppola, we'll leave it there for the moment and let you go. But do stay with us, Adele, because we understand Egypt's government has been criticized for lack of transparency regarding the coronavirus. What has been the government's reaction to this?
Well, rumors have been spreading quite rapidly and vigorously against the government. Many Egyptians believe that there is a widespread of the virus without any proof, actually. And the government has been repeatedly announcing and stressing that it has been dealing with that issue with complete transparency. The extent of the government's interaction with the people have gone quite positively far, to the extent that lately the Egyptian health minister has been releasing videos of the latest updates of the virus day by day. Also, the World Health Organization, the regional Eastern Mediterranean office, is located here in Cairo, and the office in the past few days have noticed the amount of aggression against the Egyptian government in that regard, and has released several statements. So the WHO is confirming as well that the Egyptian government is taking absolute careful measures, and it has been extremely transparent with the WHO and with the public about the number of the cases and the update that is taking place on every day. The process happened even when the health minister traveled to China, and it's the first Egyptian official delegation to go to China during the outbreak of the virus. Health Minister Hala Zaid has been leading these efforts there and has continued to release the videos and the announcement personally during her visit. Hala Zaid went by directions of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and has given China a second batch of medical supplies as a support and gift from Egypt to show solidarity and collaboration with China. Also, Hala Zaid went to get first-hand information about how to deal with that virus from the Chinese government. Let's have a listen about more details of that regard.
At the peak of China's fight against COVID-19, Egypt sends an official delegation to Beijing, led by Health Minister Hala Zaid. With the delegation, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi sends a second batch of medical supplies as a gift to the people of China.
The visit is to provide support and show solidarity with our brothers in China. It's also to exchange experiences and technical documents related to COVID-19. The Chinese government has of course established major knowledge in its dealing with the disease. We're also exchanging some special equipment used as preventive measures.
Zaid has met the vice chairman of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress and president of the Red Cross Society of China, Chen Zhu, as well as other officials. China too has given Egypt valuable gifts to assist in dealing with COVID-19. The Egyptian health minister has received the 6th edition of the technical document for the virus, a document composed by China and the WHO.
We will greatly benefit from that knowledge. China is a very developed nation in the field of medical research. A lot of research is being conducted on that new virus. We didn't know anything about the new virus. Most of the information is now available in China, a country that has dealt with the biggest number of people infected with the virus.
Egypt has also received 1,000 COVID-19 detectors. As of March 3rd, Egypt had 1,832 suspected cases. Only 2 tested positive for the virus. Exchanging gifts to empower one another to face a common threat. That's the path Egypt and China have chosen to face COVID-19. It's a war that needs partners to collaborate by all means. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Meanwhile, the Tunisian Health Ministry says over 1,600 people have been quarantined over suspected coronavirus infections. They include several foreign and local travelers and students who had arrived from Italy. The government says it has tested over 50 samples since mid-January. Here's CGTN's Adnan Chauchi with that report.
Medical monitoring has been provided for the 1,619 people, 996 of whom are still under control, and 623 others have completed the auto-quarantine phase with an incubation period estimated at 2 weeks.
The self-imposed 14-day quarantine is necessary for travelers from countries where the number of infected people with COVID-19 or victims is on the rise. People should stay at home until we allow them to leave. This is how we can control the outbreak and limit its spread to the whole population.
The Ministry of Health has warned against COVID-19 fake news, which could spread panic across Tunisia.
Informing the public opinion with scientific data and analysis about the COVID-19 epidemic helps the state in its national effort and plan in fighting the corona outbreak.
The Tunisian government has launched a media campaign to counter the coronavirus misinformation phenomenon.
The crisis management has been successful so far. It is true that more cases could be announced, but the role of the media is to inform, sensitize citizens and not terrify the population, because the epidemic will certainly end within a few months.
Prime Minister Les El-Farfar declared that prevention is highly crucial for medical and paramedical staff, police, military and customs personnel, and all actors involved in the implementation of the national plan against COVID-19.
The Ministry of Transport and Logistics and the National Office of Civil Aviation and Airports announced that flights from Italy will be moved to Terminal 2 of Tunis-Carthage International Airport. Health authorities said these preventive measures will help ensure the safety of passengers. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
And here is a quick update on the number of cases on the continent.
The number of confirmed cases of the new coronavirus has now risen from 2 to 4 in Senegal. The latest 2 patients are of French and British nationalities. One of the patients is a 33-year-old British woman who arrived in the capital, Dakar, on a flight from London. The second confirmed case is a 68-year-old French resident whose spouse earlier tested positive for the virus. Following the outbreak, President Macky Sall has cancelled all his trips until further notice. The government has also cancelled celebrations to mark the National Health Day set for 7th March and the International Women's Day scheduled for 8th March. In Algeria, the number of confirmed COVID-19 cases has risen to 17 after 9 new cases were registered on Wednesday night. The cases include an Italian man and 16 members of the same family. The family last month hosted a man and his daughter, both of whom tested positive for coronavirus after flying back to France. In Gabon, the government has suspended the movements of all foreign diplomats and NGO staff in the country. The government has also advised against entry of any diplomat currently staying abroad. Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa has also banned civil servants from foreign trips and urged other Zimbabweans to restrict their travel, especially outside Africa, as part of measures to minimize the risk of being exposed to COVID-19. And in Kenya, the High Court has ordered the state to present its coronavirus control plan to the court by 6th of March. The country has not reported any cases of coronavirus. Bulkis Anyabwa, CGTN.
To China now, where more than 140 new cases were reported in the 24 hours leading to Wednesday midnight, one of the smallest increases since the start of the epidemic. Over 96% of those cases were in Hubei province, where the outbreak began. China's total number of confirmed cases stands at around 80,000. Over 60% of them have now recovered, but more than 3,000 have died. Guangdong, Henan and Sichuan provinces are the worst hit areas outside Hubei. Outside China, more than 15,000 cases have been reported in 79 countries. Japan has more than 1,000 infections in total so far. South Korea has reported over 6,000 cases with over 400 new infections. Iran is the worst hit country in the Middle East, reporting nearly 600 new cases, bringing its total number to more than 3,000. In Europe, Germany has reported over 100 new cases, bringing its total to over 300. Italy has seen over 3,000 cases and over 100 deaths, the largest outbreak on the continent. While the number of confirmed coronavirus cases in South Korea surpassed 6,000 on Thursday. The huge increase in cases over the past 7 days has caused growing concern in the country. Authorities have now launched a new text message alert system to keep people informed of cases near them, as Tony Cheng reports.
Soldiers in sterile uniforms pack surgical masks to help overcome a shortage since the recent coronavirus outbreak. In the battle against the spread of the virus, South Korea is deploying a multitude of forces. I've just had an emergency alert on my phone, and this is one of many that we've had since we've been down in this part of South Korea. And they're being sent out by the authorities, warning us that patients who have tested positive, we have crossed the same paths. We can go to a website or use an app to see the path of that patient. They've been numbered, and we can then cross-reference our routes. And if we feel we're under threat, the message says you should go and get checked. The mobile alerts and government websites have been a vital tool in keeping the public aware of their personal exposure to the coronavirus threat and those that have been infected. People like patient number 30, a 68-year-old woman, spouse of patient 29. She was tested positive in mid-February before she was admitted to Seoul University Hospital. On the 13th of February, she ate lunch in a restaurant before walking a short distance to a coffee shop where she stayed between 1:43 and 3:10 p.m. It's the precision of information like this that's helping to keep South Koreans informed of whether they've encountered people with the virus.
I think it's helpful, although if I was a patient, I'd worry about my privacy.
It was very useful for me, because there's a confirmed patient close to where I live.
Individuals are doing their bit too. In this university pod for IT startups, Lee Dong-hun decided to improve on the government website. He started CoronaMap Live using the government's information, but presenting it in a more digestible and interactive format. Now he's getting 34 million hits a day and is many Koreans' central source of information on the outbreak.
Because this government shared data transparently, that was the reason we were able to do this.
But high tech can only do so much, and the South Korean military is still being deployed to sterilise public areas around the country. The war against coronavirus is now in full swing, in cyberspace and with boots on the ground. Tony Cheng, CGTN, Seoul.
Meanwhile, Iran has announced the closure of schools and universities until March the 20th, when New Year holidays begin. Meanwhile, the capital city Tehran is stepping up disinfection. The bustling Sayyid Qadan Bridge, a major taxi pickup point in northeastern Tehran, has been a focal point for disinfection teams. A growing number of people are now isolating themselves at home, and significantly fewer cars and pedestrians are now seen on the streets of Tehran. Officials also say checkpoints will be set up to limit travel between major cities, and they are urging citizens to reduce their use of paper money.
We have decided to strengthen control of travel. With the help of governors, police, the paramilitary force, and other bodies, we will strictly control comings and goings. At the entry routes or exit routes of cities, if we identify passengers who are suspected of infection, we will transfer them to quarantine for 14 days.
Europe's largest coronavirus outbreak is in Italy. 107 people have now died there, with the number of confirmed cases at more than 3,000. Italy's finance ministry says it's likely to increase spending to help the economy get through the effect of the epidemic. In the United States, California has reported its first death and declared a state of emergency. California's authorities say every level of government is being deployed to help identify cases and slow the spread of the disease. You're watching Africa Live. Still ahead on the program. Cote d'Ivoire's President Alassane Ouattara rules out running for a third term. And Kenya and Somalia form a team to ease border tensions. The presidents of Somalia and Kenya have spoken on the telephone in an attempt to ease increasing tension along their common border. This follows fighting early this week between the Somali National Army and Jubaland forces that injured several people. The clashes have also destroyed civilian property on the Kenyan side of the border. CGTN's Robert Nagila has more.
Footage filmed from a mobile phone showing residents fleeing to safety. These were the scenes witnessed on Monday in the Kenyan border town of Mandera as soldiers from the Somali National Army clashed with Jubaland forces. The fighting is believed to be linked to a former Jubaland minister, Abdirashid Hassan Abdinur, now a fugitive accused of escaping from jail in Mogadishu. On Wednesday, following a meeting in Nairobi by the National Security Council, Kenya accused Somalia of a flagrant breach of its territory, saying troops from Somalia had harassed Kenyans and destroyed their property. The fighting came a day after 8 Kenyan members of parliament were detained on arrival from Mogadishu, where they had met with President Abdullahi Farmajo.
And I want to make it extremely clear that we met with only one person, and that is the President of the federal government of Somalia, in person. Because we thought we will upscale this issue to the highest level. Why we did that is because Al-Shabaab's foundation and home is in Somalia.
Latest reports indicate that the leaders of both countries spoke on phone on Thursday in an attempt to de-escalate the situation. They have agreed to form committees drawn from both sides to look into strengthening diplomatic and trade relations. Earlier, Nairobi had said actions by Somalia's National Army amounted to an unwarranted attack by foreign soldiers intent on provoking Kenya. This follows a statement by Somalia's ambassador to the UN, Abubakar Dahir Osman, accusing Kenya of violating Somali territory. Calm has now been restored to the area, but tension still remains. Robert Nagela, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
The Libyan conflict has forced flights to be redirected to Misrata after the only functioning airport in Tripoli was hit by heavy shelling on Monday. Nearly 300 civilians have been killed by air raids since the Libyan National Army's commander Khalifa Haftar began his campaign to seize the capital in April. Government officials have expressed concern about the worsening security and humanitarian situation in the country. Libyan Interior Minister Fadi Bach Aga also expressed the government's regret over the resignation of the UN envoy to Libya, Hussein Salami. CGTN's Adnan Chauchi reports.
As the fighting in Libya continues and the peace process remains in tatters, the Libyan government held a media briefing on the situation in the country. Interior Minister Fathi Bashagha says the pressure from the two warring sides, that is the government of National Accord in Tripoli and Libyan National Army General Khalifa Haftar, led to the resignation of the UN envoy.
Any mediator or envoy, whether Ghassan, Salame or any other, cannot help Libyans if Libyans themselves do not help him. Unfortunately, we Libyans do not trust each other and the majority ignore good and public interest.
The Libyan official added that his government has been working closely with Washington to eradicate terrorist cells. However, Tripoli has rejected any Russian intervention or presence on Libyan soil without its agreement.
We have an important security cooperation with the US in the fight against terrorism and organized crime. Together, we defeated Daesh in Sete in a short period of time, in a limited operation. US security forces were present in Tripoli and Misrata. With information that the Russians want to establish bases in Libya or to control some air or sea bases. This is illegal and unacceptable.
Analysts maintain that the conflict in the oil-rich country has been complicated by the involvement of foreign states.
Libyans are disoriented because foreign forces have their own projects, allies and scenarios for the solution on the ground. However, if left alone without foreign pressure, Libyans can make peace.
The Libyan Interior Minister hailed the effort made by Tunisia and Algeria in inviting all Libyan stakeholders to the negotiating table. Bashagha warned that the escalation of the conflict will plunge the whole North African and Mediterranean region into chaos.
During his meeting with Arab interior ministers this week, Tunisian President Kais Saied expressed the country's commitment to finding an inter-Libyan solution. Saied has also reiterated his call for a peaceful settlement that abides by international law and stops the bloodshed in Libya. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
In Cote d'Ivoire, President Alassane Ouattara has announced he will not run in October's election, ending months of speculation over whether he would seek a third term. The October election is a major challenge for the West African nation after its 2010 ballot ended in violence between political rivals. President Ouattara was first elected in 2010 and then re-elected in 2015. He ousted the then-President Laurent Gbagbo, who refused to step down after losing elections in a standoff that triggered violent street clashes. Cote d'Ivoire's president says he will not run for the third term.
I wish to announce solemnly that I have decided not to be a candidate in the next presidential election of October 31st, 2020, and to transfer power to a young generation. I also want to ensure the conditions for a transfer of power from a democratically elected president to another for the first time in the history of our country.
I think it's a very good announcement for the Ivorian people and even for Africa, because I think that this type of declaration is good for our democracy and it shows the character of a statesman.
Thank God that President Ouattara said he would not present himself as a candidate in 2020. There will be peace in Ivory Coast. Ivorians won't be killing each other again over elections. Thank God.
Well, let's now go to Rama Nyang for a look at the day's business news. Rama.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. Here's what's coming up in business. The International Monetary Fund says it supports some parts of Kenya's deficit reduction plan. And cybercrime is increasingly targeting lax business systems in South Africa.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back to the program. Let's start in Kenya, where the International Monetary Fund has backed parts of Kenya's government's plan to reduce its fiscal deficit. This comes after IMF officials finished a 2-week visit to the country for continued negotiations on a new 3-year standby credit facility. Now, Kenya is keen to secure a new deal following the expiry of the previous one in 2018. The Finance Ministry is now expected to set a budget deficit target of 4.9% of GDP in the fiscal year that ends in June 2021. That's down from 6.3% in the current fiscal year. A near decade-long borrowing spree to fund infrastructure projects and a failure to meet unrealistic revenue collection targets are some of the reasons for Kenya's rise in its fiscal deficit and its public debt load as well. For the South, discussions on renewable energy dominated at this year's Africa Energy Indaba in Cape Town. Key players in the energy sector looked at ways to boost energy investment on a continent endowed with vast, untapped renewable energy potential. Everything from the DRC's Grand Inga to the Sahel's mostly untapped solar power. Here's CGTN's Travis Andrews with the details.
South Africa's energy crisis may have plunged the country's economy into turmoil, but it's also offered economic opportunities for new investors hoping to stay ahead of the pack. This is especially true for independent power producers. Many of them attended this year's Africa Energy Indaba, where the spotlight was on renewable energy generation. According to the government, clean energy won't just be good for the South African environment, it's also good for local businesses.
So we intend to have South Africans participating as owners, as developers, and of course to employ South Africans in the local jobs. It's important that as we execute the renewable energy program, it's not only benefiting the investors, international investors, it needs to benefit the local South Africans as well.
South Africa wants to diversify its sources of energy, and the government wants to produce more power through joint ventures.
There's existing plants already that will be quick to generate electricity and inject into the grid. So those are there. There might be capex investment that are required to do modifications. There's another category of new plants greenfields plants that, with the proper RFP documents, we believe that it will entice the market to invest in new plants altogether.
Investors are looking at new energy generation opportunities across the board, including exploiting gas reserves around the African coast, such as those in Mozambique. South Africa's gas-to-power sector may still be in its infancy, but the renewable industry is already on its way to sustainability by already generating over 6,500 megawatts into the grid. As Africa's largest economy, Nigeria plans to generate additional electricity by tapping into more than 200 trillion cubic feet of gas reserves. It's also increasing investments in renewable energy.
One of the major things there is significant expansion of renewable energy and doubling of energy efficiency. So Nigeria also has very big plans to utilize renewable energy. For your information, the government not too long ago decided all the 37 federal government-owned universities will be powered mostly by renewable energy power plants.
For now, there are certainly encouraging signs which show significant amounts of foreign direct investment is headed to Africa for new energy projects, which will benefit the growth of the continent in significant ways. Travis Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
Still in South Africa, cybercrime has become a standard business risk of increasing profile as criminals increasingly target a broad range of often unsecured business systems. A ransomware attack on the Johannesburg municipality in late 2019 is just one example of how vulnerable some systems in the country really are. CGTN's Angela Coppola reports.
The cyber attack on the Johannesburg municipality highlighted the fact that nothing is safe.
Cyber now is as important as power grid, as transportation, as healthcare. So that's why the municipal authorities must be aware of the cyber issues.
There's a rudimentary legal framework in place in South Africa to protect businesses from cybercrimes like hacking, denial of service attacks and internet fraud.
There is a bill in the offing, it's called the Cybercrimes Bill. It's not yet law. What that does is it creates a variety of new offences. It's a far more comprehensive approach to cybercrime. As I say, it's not yet law. In addition, the Hawks have a cybercrimes unit whose job it is to detect and ultimately bring cybercrime offenders to prosecution.
The worst-case scenarios are in fact realities and could strike the South African municipal networks at any time.
Blackout, which is caused by cyber attack, it's not it's not a fantasy. Actually, it's already happened several times when the power companies they were under cyber attacks, and as a result, there was a blackout. There could be attacks on their other urban facilities. Because many of them, if not all of them, they are managed by so-called SCADA systems. So they are computer systems which have the industrial software and they manage the industrial systems.
The nature of the business world has changed. Cybercrime was less important several years ago than it is today. Criminals will use technology to gain illegal access for a myriad of reasons.
Our world is so different from what it was 20, 25 years ago that I think it's the speed at which it's changed that has fundamentally overwhelmed our ability to respond to the changes and make sense of the changes. I think that we barely understand the world in which we live now, and that has opened opportunities for cyber criminals.
Experts point to a change in emphasis as we now live in a so-called cyber world, which implies that cybersecurity issues become even more critical.
How to design the cyber system, especially in infrastructure, and especially in critical infrastructure, like power plants, power grid, transportation, healthcare, financial sector. How to make it immune, to design the cyber software, to design the systems which are unhackable.
In today's world, there's no piece of equipment or technology that's immune from a hacker, and it's important that you protect yourself. If you don't, you're liable to get into trouble. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Ever since Sierra Leone's largest iron ore mine laid off nearly all of its workers late last year, the once bustling town of Lunsa has now turned into a ghost town. Many residents have left and those who remain are struggling to get by. CGTN's Daniela Pearson has that story.
For many residents of Lunsa in Sierra Leone, Marampa Mine was home away from home. The town truly lived up to its name, which means land of stones in the local language, up until this mine was forced to shut down over a legal dispute in October. More than 1,700 people lost their jobs.
When I was working, I can able to save. But now, what I'm doing now, I can't save. People who are living in the mining areas, all their hope is on mining. Most of them cannot even embark on agriculture. They just depend on mining. So if that mining closes, it's really difficult for the people now.
When he was an electrician at the mine, Bangura felt his future was safe. He now scrapes a living growing corn and vegetables on a small plot whose soil shimmers from the still abundant iron ore in the ground.
Even some of the crops that some of us planted, when they came, they destroyed. Oh, we're going to pay for this one. Don't care about this one. They don't give us that money. They do not relocate us. So that's why you find out this particular year, people are really suffering here.
In Lunsa, the streets are unusually quiet and only a few stalls in the once busy central market remain open. Taxi drivers, shop owners and petty traders alike say that businesses have been grounded to a halt.
before I get for pay microfinance.
I am not home because I have to pay back my microcredit. I'm not home because I am afraid to open my shop.
The residents of Lunsa are victims of a dispute between President Julius Maada Bio and international iron ore miners. This led to the government revoking the licenses owned by mining companies, which previously generated a quarter of the country's annual export revenue.
If the mines do not reopen, we will have to run away. There's no work in Lunsa. There's nothing going on. You've seen the market, people are begging. When people don't buy their products, they beg because there's nothing to eat.
This community is going to become a ghost community once again. And that everything is going to be dead. Buildings are going to be dilapidated. People are going to move out. So the entire township of Lunsa will become, yet again, another ghost town. So as someone from Lunsa, this hurts.
Until now, Sierra Leone's government has ignored international court orders for it to reinstate the license of SL Mining. The company has denied the government's claims that it was not paying what it owed. This debacle for the residents of Lunsa has left them with nothing but hopes for a better tomorrow. Daniela Pearson, CGTN.
Africa's richest man, Aliko Dangote, has pledged over $500,000 to support the Nigerian government's efforts to stop the spread of the coronavirus. Our correspondent Phil Ihaza filed this report from the nation's capital, Abuja.
According to the Chief Executive Officer of Aliko Dangote Foundation, Zoera Yusufu, the donation is part of the foundation's cardinal objective of partnering with governments at all levels. Ms. Yusufu said the foundation had earmarked about $550,000 to support facilities that would assist, prevent, assess and respond to health events at points of entry to ensure national health security. She said other areas the foundation is supporting include surveillance and epidemiology, case management and training of health workers. Yusufu recalled that the Aliko Dangote Foundation committed nearly $3 million to the fight against Ebola virus disease back in 2014 and supported the government through investments that built resilience and strengthened Nigeria's health system. Nigeria on February 28 confirmed its first case of COVID-19, making it the first country in sub-Saharan Africa to confirm the virus. Over 100 people who were suspected to have had contact with the index patient have already been quarantined. The government has assured of its preparedness to contain the virus and has so far released about $2 million to the Health Ministry to tackle the spread of the disease and acquire necessary items required for treatment and prevention. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja.
Now, as we have been reporting, many regions in northern Italy are in quarantine, but precautions are also now extending to people who've travelled there. Our correspondent, Natalie Carney, is one of those affected.
So I'm in home isolation, having just returned from Milan in northern Italy. The Lombardy region, where Milan is located, has been one of the most heavily affected regions in the entire country with the most confirmed cases of COVID-19. Now, I've been tested here in Munich and my results have been negative, but the Bavarian health authorities have advised that I stay home and that I continue to limit any interaction with the public for at least one more week. So here's what I've been doing.
First and foremost, I've still been working. It's been a good opportunity to catch up on a lot of loose ends. I've also been doing a lot of cleaning and sterilizing, and of course a lot of hand washing. Health officials say that ensuring your hands are clean is the best prevention. I've probably been drinking more coffee than I would usually, but it helps the hours pass.
One of the positives, I guess you could say, of home isolation is the allowance it gives you to do things that you wouldn't normally be able to do during your regular day. I don't normally have the time to iron my clothes, but now I've got lots of it.
As the weather's been getting better, I've also used the time to tidy up my little balcony garden and teach myself a few new dishes in the kitchen.
So another important and rather exciting thing I've managed to do while being stuck at home is go through that endless bag drawer. You know, the drawer that constantly gets stuck because there's too many bags jammed in there. So I've had the time now to sort through it all. I've got the paper bags, as well as the more durable shopping bags. Plus, 2 more available drawers now, too.
And yes, I've been catching up on episodes of my favorite TV shows.
I've just received a press release from the Bavarian Ministry of Health, and they're saying a total of 37 cases have now been detected here in the state. Prior to this, there were only 11 confirmed cases, which means 26 new people have been tested positive for COVID-19 in just the last few hours.
As the numbers rise across the country, Germany's health ministry says completely quarantining or cutting off areas is not yet on the cards. However, several schools, hospitals, and workplaces, such as BMW, have been temporarily closed after positive cases were detected, meaning a few others will likely also have some extra time on their hands. Natalie Carney for CGTN, at home in Munich.
And we'll leave you there for the time being. I'll be back at the top of the hour. In Global Business, we'll be looking at the damage estimate from the coronavirus outbreak. It's estimated, for example, to cost African airlines billions of dollars in revenue this year alone. We'll be looking at those grim projections from IATA at 1800 GMT. See you then. For now, back to Beatrice.
Rama, thank you. And we still have more news for you here on the program. Here's what's ahead. Benin Museum celebrates the return of precious artifacts from France.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Kanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
To Benin now, where nearly 30 artworks of former Abomey kingdoms have just been returned to the country's national museums. The move coincides with the Franco-Beninese negotiation process that seeks a return of royal treasures that the West African nation is claiming from France. CGTN's Daniel Arap-Moy tells us more.
This is one of the largest mass returns of African artifacts stolen by France during colonization. So far, Benin has received 28 of them, most of which belong to several former royalties of Abomey city. The return of these rare ancestral pieces will help in enriching a good part of the pre-colonial history of Benin.
When we received these works, we categorized them by king and by symbol. We now have a chance to learn about our ancient kingdom before colonization. We can learn more about the wealth that was in our kingdom before the French occupation through these cultural artifacts.
It's said that the pieces of artworks were acquired from traders or at public sales by museums curators who used their own funds to purchase them. The initiative aims at supporting Benin in its quest to repatriate historical artifacts back to the country.
The Beninese government, through the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Arts, has welcomed this initiative. We commend it because it will educate our people on our heritage. Tourists will now have many more reasons to come and look at these works in their natural environment, rather than going to see them elsewhere. So the fact that these works have come back to their land has an important value for us Beninese.
Most of these artifacts were looted during the 1892 battle and have since then been classified as French heritage. Through its 2016-2021 action program, Benin's government intends to make the culture, arts and tourism sector a major lever of the national economy. Daniel Arap-Moy, CGTN.
And your sports news coming up next. Here's what's ahead. South Africa failed to progress to the finals of the Women's T20 Cricket World Cup.
would you create your legend?